At night, the mind often becomes loudest when the world has finally become quiet. The dishes are done. The lights are off. The last car has passed outside. The phone rests face down on the nightstand. The room is dark, the house is still, and yet something inside you keeps moving. A conversation from 3 years ago returns with perfect detail. A bill that is not due for another week suddenly feels urgent. A small pain in the body becomes a frightening possibility. An unanswered message becomes proof that someone is leaving. A mistake from long ago stands beside the bed as if it happened this morning. You tell yourself to stop thinking. The mind answers by thinking about why it cannot stop thinking. You try to sleep. The effort to sleep becomes another reason you cannot sleep. You are tired, but the mind keeps working as if dawn depends on its vigilance. This is one of the quietest forms of suffering. Nothing is happening in the room, yet inside, a whole world is burning. You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. There is a strange contradiction in nighttime worry. We want rest, but we keep searching for certainty. We want peace, but we keep returning to the same questions. We want the mind to become quiet, but we continue feeding it with arguments, predictions, memories, and imagined futures. Part of us believes that if we think long enough, we will finally solve what hurts. Perhaps we will find the perfect sentence we should have said. Perhaps we will discover the hidden danger before it arrives. Perhaps we will understand why someone changed. Perhaps we will predict the future clearly enough to avoid pain. But the mind can spend an entire night asking questions that have no answer available at 2 in the morning. Why did they do that? What if I fail? What if the test result is bad? What if my child is unhappy? What if I never recover? What if I made the wrong choice? What if tomorrow changes everything? Nighttime thinking often disguises itself as responsibility. It says you must stay awake. You must figure this out. You must protect everyone. You must not let your guard down. But worry is not always wisdom. Sometimes worry is the mind pacing the same hallway and calling it progress. There was once a woman named Claire who lived alone in a small house at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. She was 61, recently retired, and still adjusting to the silence left behind by a life that had once been full of schedules, meetings, phone calls, and people needing answers. During the day, she managed well. She walked in the park. She bought groceries. She spoke to her sister. She watered the plants near the kitchen window. But at night, her mind became a courtroom. It replayed every decision she had made about money. It questioned whether she had retired too early. It warned her that her children might not need her anymore. It reviewed the health of everyone she loved. It imagined becoming ill and having no one nearby. She would look at the clock. 12:43, then 1:18, then 2:07. Each time she looked, she felt a little more afraid. Not only of tomorrow, but of the fact that she was still awake. One night, after hours of turning from one side of the bed to the other, Claire got up and walked into the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. A cup sat beside the sink. The porch light shone over the empty steps. Nothing was wrong in that moment. Nothing was asking to be solved. But her mind had carried 10 possible futures into the room and placed them all on the table. Claire made warm tea and sat down. She remembered something an older friend had once told her. The mind speaks loudly at night because there is nothing else competing for your attention. Do not believe that loud means true. Claire repeated the sentence softly. Do not believe that loud means true. A fearful thought may be loud. A regret may be loud. A memory may be loud. that does not make it accurate, useful, or worthy of obedience. In Buddhist teaching, the mind is often compared to a restless animal, not because the mind is bad, but because an untrained mind reacts quickly to every sound. A branch moves, and it imagines danger. A memory appears, and it becomes the past again. A possibility arises, and it becomes a prophecy. The practice is not to hate the mind for doing this. The practice is to know what it is doing while it is doing it. This is awareness. Awareness does not always stop the thought. It changes the relationship to the thought. Instead of saying, something terrible is going to happen, you may begin to notice, fear is imagining something terrible. Instead of saying, I ruined everything, you may notice the mind is returning to an old mistake. Instead of saying, I will never sleep, you may notice the mind is afraid of being awake. This small change in language creates a little space. And sometimes, a little space is enough for the body to breathe. Good people still have sleepless nights. Kind people still worry. Mindful people still feel anxiety. Spiritual practice does not create a private agreement with life in which nothing painful is allowed to happen. Meditation does not remove uncertainty. Compassion does not protect us from loss. Wisdom does not mean the mind will never become afraid again. Buddhist practice is not a bargain with life. It is not a promise that if you live correctly, the future will become safe. It is a way of meeting the unsafe, changing, unfinished nature of life without adding unnecessary suffering to every moment. A man named Thomas understood this after his wife became ill. For months, he slept in short pieces. He would wake at every sound. He checked whether she was breathing. He listened for movement in the hallway. He kept his phone close in case the hospital called. Even after she began recovering, Thomas could not stop. His body had learned vigilance. At midnight, he checked the doors. At 1, he checked the phone. At 2, he searched symptoms online. At 3, he sat at the edge of the bed, exhausted and ashamed that he could not simply relax. He believed he was failing at peace. But the body does not release fear just because the mind has been told that danger is over. Sometimes the nervous system continues guarding a door long after the threat has passed. This is why spiritual teaching must be gentle. You cannot shame the body into calm. You cannot insult the mind into silence. You cannot demand that a frightened heart become wise immediately. Thomas eventually spoke with a therapist who helped him understand that nighttime vigilance had become a habit of protection. The fear was not proof that danger was present. It was evidence that his body had spent too long preparing for danger. He began a simple practice. Before bed, he wrote down what was actually true. His wife was sleeping safely in the next room. The doctor had given clear instructions. The phone volume was on. The doors were locked. Nothing more was required tonight. Then he wrote one sentence beneath it. I do not need to stand guard over the entire future. This did not cure every sleepless night. It did not remove all fear. But it gave his mind a boundary. Tonight is not the whole future. This room is not every possible emergency. This breath is not responsible for tomorrow. One of the greatest obstacles to rest is the illusion of control. The mind says, if I keep thinking, I will be prepared. But there is a difference between preparation and repetition. Preparation leads to an action. You make the appointment. You send the email. You lock the door. You set the alarm. You take the medicine as prescribed. You write down the question you need to ask. Repetition leads nowhere. It circles the same possibility, producing more fear but no new step. At night, ask yourself gently, Is there something useful I can do now? If the answer is yes, write it down and decide when you will do it. If the answer is no, the practice is not to solve. The practice is to stop asking the night to give you what only time can reveal. Long ago, a student came to a Zen teacher and said, "My mind is never still. It follows me into sleep. It argues with the past and negotiates with the future. Please tell me how to stop it." The teacher poured a cup of muddy water from a jar and placed it on the table. "Make the water clear," he said. The student reached for the cup and began stirring, hoping to separate the mud from the water. The water became darker. He stirred more carefully, still darker. He tried scooping the mud out with a spoon, but the mud dissolved into every part of the cup. Finally frustrated, he asked, "What should I do?" The teacher said, "Put it down." The student placed the cup on the table. They sat in silence. Slowly, the mud began to settle. After some time, the water became clear enough to see through. The teacher said, "The water did not become clear because you defeated the mud. It became clear because you stopped disturbing it." The restless mind is often like this. We stir it with effort. We stir it with judgment. We stir it by asking why it is not calm yet. We stir it by checking the clock. We stir it by measuring our progress. We stir it by turning sleep into a test. Sometimes the mind does not need another technique. It needs less interference. This does not mean you should lie in bed suffering for hours. Practical care matters. A regular sleep routine may help. Reducing caffeine may help. Medical guidance may be necessary. Therapy may be necessary. Medication may be appropriate under professional care. Meditation is not a replacement for treatment when anxiety, trauma, depression, chronic pain, or a sleep disorder is present. Wisdom includes asking for help. There is no spiritual prize for struggling alone. A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. For some people, that step is sitting quietly for 10 minutes. For others, it is making a medical appointment. For others, it is turning off the news before bed. For others, it is admitting that the relationship they are in is harming them. For others, it is calling a therapist. The path is not always dramatic. Sometimes the next wise step is very ordinary. Another obstacle that keeps the mind awake is guilt. Guilt often arrives after midnight because the defenses of the day have become tired. You remember the person you hurt, the opportunity you missed, the time you were impatient with your child, the last conversation with a parent who is no longer alive, the mistake that cannot be undone. The mind believes that repeated punishment is the same as responsibility. It says if you stop hurting, you do not care. But suffering is not always proof of sincerity. Sometimes guilt is simply pain refusing to become wisdom. A woman named Elena carried guilt for many years over the final months of her father's life. She had been busy raising 2 children and working full-time. Her father lived several states away. She called, but not as often as she now believed she should have. He died suddenly. Afterward, every quiet night became an accusation. You should have called. You should have visited. You should have known. You should have been better. Elena replayed their last conversation. Her father had asked about the weather. She had sounded distracted. The call ended quickly. This ordinary exchange became unbearable because it was the last one. One evening, Elena spoke with an older monk at a community meditation center. She told him, "I cannot forgive myself." The monk did not say that she had done nothing wrong. He did not offer easy comfort. He asked, "What does your guilt ask you to do now?" Elena was silent. At first, the question sounded impossible. Her father was gone. Nothing could be repaired with him. Then she said, "It asks me not to take people for granted." The monk nodded. "Then let the guilt become a teacher instead of a prison." This is a crucial difference. Healthy remorse may guide action. It may lead to an apology. It may lead to changed behavior. It may lead you to make the phone call you have delayed. It may lead you to become more present with the people who are still here. But self-punishment repeats the wound without creating repair. In Buddhist teaching, karma is not a system of cosmic revenge. It is not a simple reward chart. Karma points to the way intentions, habits, words, and actions shape the mind and influence future conditions. When guilt becomes honesty, the path changes. When remorse becomes apology, the path changes. When regret becomes compassionate action, the path changes. What matters is not only what happened. What matters is what you repeat now. Elena began calling her mother every Sunday. She did not do it as payment for the past. She did it because awareness had shown her what mattered. She listened more carefully. She stopped rushing every conversation. Sometimes they spoke about nothing important. A recipe, a neighbor, a television show. The ordinary nature of the call was part of its beauty. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. At night, the mind may insist that only extraordinary actions count. But a trustworthy heart is built through small repetitions. Keeping a promise, answering honestly, admitting when you were wrong, listening when someone is speaking, resting before exhaustion makes you cruel, leaving a harmful situation instead of calling suffering loyalty, returning to the practice after you have forgotten it. Another obstacle is attachment to certainty. The mind wants to know, will this relationship last? Will my child be safe? Will I have enough money? Will the treatment work? Will I be alone? Will people remember me? Will I regret this decision? We imagine certainty would bring peace. But certainty is rarely available. And even when one question is answered, the mind quickly creates another. A new opportunity does not guarantee peace. More money does not guarantee peace. A spiritual teacher does not guarantee transformation. The mind that clings to certainty can turn any gift into a new source of fear. A promotion becomes fear of failure. More money becomes fear of loss. A loving relationship becomes fear of abandonment. Better health becomes fear that illness will return. This is not because you are ungrateful. It is because the mind has learned to look for the next threat. Buddhist teaching does not ask us to pretend uncertainty is comfortable. It asks us to see that uncertainty is not a defect in life. It is part of life. A branch grows without knowing where the wind will come from. A child takes a first step without knowing whether they will fall. A person loves without knowing how the story will end. To live is to move without a complete map. A man named Arthur learned this while waiting for his daughter to call. She was traveling alone for the first time. Her flight had landed, but she had not sent the message she promised. Arthur checked the arrivals page. The flight was listed as complete. He called. No answer. He imagined a lost phone, a missed connection, an accident, a stranger, a hospital, every possible danger the mind could create. His wife said, "She is probably collecting her luggage." Arthur replied, "You do not know that." He was right. She did not know. But neither did he. Fear had mistaken possibility for evidence. Arthur stood by the living room window and watched the street. A neighbor brought in groceries. A dog pulled at its leash. A bus stopped at the corner. Life continued while his mind lived in catastrophe. Then his daughter called. Her phone had died. She was safe. Arthur felt relief, but he also felt something else. He saw how quickly love had become control. He could not protect his daughter from every uncertain moment. He could teach her. He could support her. He could answer when she needed him. But he could not travel inside her life and remove every danger. Love must eventually make room for uncertainty. Otherwise, it becomes a cage built from fear. You may notice the first sign of inner change when you begin reacting less quickly. The thought still comes, the body still tightens, but you do not immediately reach for the phone. You do not send the angry message. You do not search the symptom for the 10th time. You do not wake your partner to ask the same question again. You pause, perhaps only for one breath, but in that breath, something new becomes possible. You may ask, what do I actually know? Not what do I fear? Not what could happen? What do I know? The second sign may be that you stop treating every thought as a command. The thought says, check the door again. You notice it. The thought says, they are upset with you. You notice it. The thought says, tomorrow will be unbearable. You notice it. Thoughts are events in the mind. They are not always instructions. Imagine standing beside a river at night. Leaves float past. Some move quickly. Some circle near the bank. Some disappear into darkness. You do not need to enter the river and follow each leaf. A thought can pass without becoming a journey. This is one purpose of meditation, not to create a blank mind, not to force silence, but to learn that noticing is different from obeying. Sit quietly. Feel the weight of the body. Notice the breath without changing it. When a thought comes, name it gently. Planning, remembering, fearing, judging. Then return. The mind may wander again immediately. Return again. Each return is not evidence that you failed. Each return is the practice itself. The third sign of change may be that you stop needing an answer before allowing yourself to rest. A difficult conversation may still be unfinished. The email may still be unanswered. The test result may still be pending. The future may still be unclear. And yet you say, nothing more can be done tonight. This sentence is not denial. It is a boundary. The night does not need to carry tomorrow's work. A farmer does not dig up a seed every hour to check whether it is growing. Some processes require time without interference. A relationship may need space. A body may need rest. A decision may need mourning. There is wisdom in not forcing clarity from an exhausted mind. The fourth sign may be that you become kinder toward your own fear. Before, you insulted yourself. Why am I like this? Why can't I calm down? What is wrong with me? Now, you may place a hand on the chest and say, something in me is afraid. This language matters. Fear is present. But fear is not the whole self. You do not have to become fear in order to care for it. A frightened child is not calmed by being called foolish. The frightened part of the mind is similar. It needs steadiness. It needs truth. It may need professional support. It does not need shame. The fifth sign may be that you begin protecting the hour before sleep. Many people ask the mind to become peaceful after feeding it noise all evening. News, arguments, work messages, bright screens, disturbing images, comparisons, other people's emergencies. Then suddenly the lights go off and the mind is ordered to become still. But the mind carries momentum. What you repeatedly give attention to continues moving after the screen is dark. Protecting the hour before sleep is not about creating a perfect ritual. It may simply mean reducing what enters. Put the phone farther away. Dim the lights. Write down tomorrow's tasks. Avoid a difficult conversation unless it truly cannot wait. Read something gentle. Sit quietly for 10 minutes. Take 3 conscious breaths. The first breath says, the day is ending. The second says, nothing more is required right now. The third says, I am allowed to rest without solving my entire life. The sixth sign may be that you become willing to ask for help. Some minds will not quiet because they are carrying untreated pain. Trauma can return at night. Depression can deepen in silence. Chronic anxiety can make every small uncertainty feel dangerous. Physical conditions can affect sleep. Medication can affect sleep. Hormonal changes can affect sleep. Grief can affect sleep. Seeking help is not a lack of faith. It is responsibility. A therapist, doctor, counselor, support group, teacher, friend, or family member may help you see a path you could not see alone. But no guide can live the practice for you. The seventh sign may be gratitude for ordinary safety. Not forced gratitude. Not pretending everything is fine. Simply noticing what is here. A blanket, a roof, a glass of water, the sound of rain, the low light in the hallway, the fact that someone knows your name, the fact that morning has come many times before. Gratitude does not erase pain. It keeps pain from becoming the only thing in the room. There was once an old monk who was asked how he remained peaceful when he woke at night. He said, I do not argue with being awake. The student who asked him was confused. Do you not try to fall asleep again? The monk smiled. The body may return to sleep. It may not. But if I fight the moment, I create 2 problems. Being awake is one. My resistance is the second. This is the teaching of the 2 arrows. The first arrow is the pain we cannot always avoid. The sleeplessness, the uncertainty, the memory, the loss. The second arrow is what the mind adds. This should not be happening. I will be ruined tomorrow. I am broken. Everyone else can rest except me. My life will always be this way. The first arrow may still hurt, but awareness may prevent the second from being fired again and again. This is not passivity. If sleeplessness continues, take practical action. Change habits. Seek medical advice. Address anxiety. Examine stress. But in the moment itself, fighting wakefulness may make the body more alert. Sometimes the gentlest response is to say, I am awake right now. Not forever. Right now. Then feel the pillow. Feel the blanket. Listen to the room. Let the breath happen without forcing it to become deep. The body may settle when it is no longer being tested. Night magnifies loneliness. During the day, there are errands, conversations, traffic, and responsibilities. At night, an empty chair can feel larger. A silent phone can feel heavier. A person who has died can feel both far away and strangely near. A relationship that ended can return through memory with painful clarity. A widow named Joan kept the television on every night after her husband died. Not because she watched it. She needed voices in the house. Silence reminded her that no one was sleeping beside her. She would wake at 2 in the morning and reach toward the other side of the bed. The emptiness felt new every time. Friends told her she needed to move on. But grief does not move according to the schedules of other people. One night, the power went out during a storm. The house became completely dark. The television stopped. Joan sat in the silence she had been avoiding. Rain struck the windows. Wind moved through the trees. She cried for a long time. Then something softened. The silence was painful, but it was not empty. It held the rain. It held her breathing. It held memory. It held the love that had nowhere to go. Joan began speaking aloud, not because she believed her husband would answer. She simply said what she had been carrying. I miss you. I am angry you are gone. I do not know how to do this. When the power returned, she did not turn on the television. She sat with one lamp and allowed the room to be quiet. This was not the end of grief. It was the beginning of no longer running from it. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means releasing the demand that the past become different. You may still love the person. You may still miss the life you had. You may still wish the story had ended another way. But wishing does not have to become a nightly battle. Forgiveness may also arise at night. Not because the other person deserves access to you. Not because harm should be minimized. Forgiving without returning to abuse is possible. You can release hatred and keep the boundary. You can stop rehearsing the argument and still refuse contact. You can understand someone's suffering without allowing them to continue causing yours. Compassion is not the abandonment of wisdom. A calm boundary may be one of the most compassionate actions available. It says, I will not keep participating in what harms both of us. At night, when resentment returns, you may say this happened. It mattered. I will not deny it. But I do not need to live it again in this moment. Then return to the breath, not to make the past disappear. To remind the body that the past is not happening now. Karma lives in these repetitions. Each time you return to hatred, the path of hatred becomes easier to find. Each time you return to awareness, the path of awareness becomes more familiar. Each time you speak gently, restraint becomes more natural. Each time you set a boundary, self-respect becomes stronger. Each time you rest instead of proving your worth through exhaustion, the mind learns a new way to live. Compassion is a way of living, not a ritual for receiving rewards. You may act kindly and still be misunderstood. You may forgive and still lose the relationship. You may meditate and still wake at night. You may live honestly and still face difficulty. The value of the practice is not that it guarantees a painless future. The value is that it changes the kind of mind you bring into the future. A peaceful later life is not simply a large bank account or a house without problems. It may be fewer regrets, honest relationships, manageable needs, a stable home, enough health to enjoy morning light, someone to call, the ability to sleep without fighting every memory, the courage to apologize, the wisdom to leave what is harmful, the humility to ask for help, the capacity to sit alone without believing you have been abandoned by life. To protect peace, practice honesty, gratitude, humility, boundaries, restraint, forgiveness, responsibility, and compassion. Honesty says, this is what I feel. Humility says, my fear is not the whole truth. Boundaries say, not everything belongs in my mind tonight. Restraint says, I do not need to respond immediately. Forgiveness says, the past will not be allowed to occupy every room. Responsibility says, I will do what is mine. Compassion says, I will not punish myself for being human. Tonight, there may be something specific keeping you awake. Perhaps it is a decision. Write down the facts. Write down what you fear. Do not confuse the two. Perhaps it is a conversation. Write the sentence you need to say. Do not continue arguing with an imaginary version of the person. Perhaps it is guilt. Ask whether repair is possible. Apologize honestly when it is. Change the behavior. Then stop using pain as proof that you care. Perhaps it is uncertainty. Name one action you can take tomorrow. Then release the rest until tomorrow arrives. Perhaps it is loneliness. Send a message to someone safe. Not a perfect message, just an honest one. I've been having a hard night. Perhaps it is grief. Place a hand over the heart. Say the person's name. Let love and pain exist together. Perhaps it is fear without a clear reason. Feel the body. Notice 5 things touching you. The pillow, the sheet, the air, the weight of your hands, the support beneath you. Let the senses remind the mind where it is. You do not need to force deep breathing. Take one natural breath, then another. The breath has been moving all day without your control. Let it continue. The turning point in a difficult night is often ordinary. An unanswered message remains unanswered, but you stop checking. A memory returns, but you do not enter it. A fear appears, but you write it down instead of feeding it. A clock shows 2:14, and you decide not to look again. A cup of tea cools beside you. Rain begins. The body feels tired, and for the first time that night, you stop demanding that the moment become different before you allow yourself to be gentle. Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. You may still be awake, but you are no longer fighting the fact that you are awake. You may still feel fear, but fear is no longer the only voice in the room. You may still miss someone, but memory is not pulling you completely out of the present. This is how change begins. Not with a miracle, with a different response. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. The old way may have been checking the phone 10 times. Now you check once and place it down. The old way may have been attacking yourself. Now you speak with patience. The old way may have been trying to solve the whole future. Now you choose one necessary action. The old way may have been staying silent about your suffering. Now you ask for help. The old way may have been calling exhaustion responsibility. Now you allow the body to rest. Outside, the night continues without asking your permission. Clouds move. Streetlights shine over empty roads. A train passes somewhere in the distance. In another house, someone else is awake, carrying their own unfinished story. You are not the only person who has stared at the ceiling. You are not the only person whose mind has returned to a painful conversation. You are not the only person afraid of tomorrow. This does not make your suffering small. It reminds you that you belong to the human world, a world where people love and lose, hope and worry, make mistakes and begin again. The night is not asking you to become enlightened before morning. It is asking only that you stop adding weight to what is already heavy. Let the unanswered question remain unanswered for now. Let the past remain in the past for one breath. Let the future wait outside the room. Let the body be tired without calling it broken. Let the mind speak without believing every word. You do not have to chase each thought. You do not have to finish every internal argument. You do not have to earn rest by solving your life. Perhaps sleep will come soon. Perhaps it will take time. Do not make sleep another test of worth. Rest may begin before sleep. It begins when resistance softens. It begins when the jaw unclenches. It begins when the phone is placed down. It begins when the heart is allowed to be imperfect. It begins when you remember that this night is a moment, not a prophecy. Morning light will eventually enter an ordinary room. It may touch the floor, the curtain, the cup beside the bed. Not every pain will be gone. Not every answer will have arrived. But a new day does not require you to carry the whole night forward. Awareness changes the direction of a life one ordinary moment at a time. Letting go is not giving up. It is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. It is allowing the night to be night. It is allowing the mind to be a mind. It is choosing not to turn every thought into a command. And it is remembering, even now, that peace may not be found by winning the argument inside you. Sometimes peace begins when the argument is no longer continued. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.